And now it is time for the last panel. It will be dedicated to blockchain for frictionless trade, a post-COVID reality. In May 2020, European Parliament published a survey with the title Blockchain for Supply Chains and International Trade. A vast survey that addressed the crucial topics considering blockchain and trade wrote among findings. Blockchain is in need of enhanced recognition. Despite the hype, many still not understand it. Well, with this next panel, we will contribute to much needed clarity and enhance the knowledge. The moderator of the panel is Tomáš Levák from Origin. The floor is yours.
Hello. Just a sec. There we go. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on your time zones again. I hope you're having a good day so far. As we embark on this last panel for today, frictionless international trade, it's a big one, something that touches in one way or another all of our lives. And I guess what we could say from the perspective of the last couple of years, frictionless really wasn't the adjective to describe international trade. Given all the hurdles we've had, given all the shortages, blockages or whatnots, it's been quite an eventful period. What we're going to do today is I'll be joined by two very esteemed guests. So we'll be joined by Dan Pertel from the British Standard Institution, and we'll have Ken McElroy from the Home Depot, who is also VP of Supplier Compliance Audit Network, SCAN for short. Between the two of them, we're looking at a fountain of knowledge on this topic. It's a lot of experience, and I'm really excited for them to take their time out of the busy schedule to really speak to us on some of the lessons that they've learned across their careers, as well as some of the things that both of them have been working on when it comes to implementation of blockchain and blockchain-based technologies like Origin Trail is. So we'll be covering quite a few topics. So it's going to be a wholesome thing. We're going to start off with a few introductory speeches. So they're going to have a chance to speak of what they're focused on recently and what are some of the things that they see to be crucial. And we'll end up this session with a short discussion between the three of us on the topic of the frictionless international trade. Without further ado, I'll maybe look into some of the topics that from the perspective of Origin Trail especially, we see as the key things to tackle or to speak of when we're talking about the frictionless international trade and, or if you will, global supply chains in general. So at Origin Trail, what our main focus is really organizing assets and organizing assets in a way to make them discoverable, to make them verifiable, and to make them valuable. Now, what do we mean when we say assets? We really like to think of the world that we're living today, which is a lot of times torn between the physical world and the digital world, especially those that maybe are more engaged within the Web3 ecosystems can feel this divide even more, especially because of the nature of the technologies that they might be interacting with. But the future is not separated. It's a convergence of the two. There's so many things, the impact potential or the mainstream things that are happening in the physical world are just huge. And the lessons that we're learning or the tools that we're creating, the concepts that we're bringing forward within the Web3 are very powerful. They're very new, they're very attractive, and they have a lot of implications in the physical world. But the missing link here is really how to move from physical to digital, how to create data, contextual data that can describe the things that are happening in the physical world and bring it or converge it into the digital reality as well. How can we cross what we have as a situation in our Web2 world of data silos or of systems, fragmented systems all across the board, closed down and very limited in terms of communicating with each other, especially if we're talking about global supply chains, partners We would wish to see more collaboration when it comes to data, when it comes to knowledge, when it comes to effective and actionable work done in exchanging these data assets, these knowledge assets. We're seeing a requirement to move from this Web 2 siloed data to a Web 3 semantic future, where we could really have discoverability of different assets. We could have verifiability of it. So we have trust and integrity instilled in it. And we'll have a foundation to move from data, from knowledge to value. So we'll be able to create and leverage all the things that Web3 has so beautifully created over the course of the last years, and leverage it to create more equitable, more fair systems in global supply chains, to create motivations that are coming from outside of a financial scheme set up by the policymakers. It comes from tangible value that's created. It comes from including other people to get a part, to become a part of the global supply chains. And when we're talking about it, see, frictionless is the key thing, right? We got to make it happen in a way that doesn't really create yet another problem, yet another process, yet another system to implement. It should be inclusive of the work already done. It should be something that brings people together, or brings systems and people together, rather than divides them even further. So how do we tackle it? There's two components of it. So origin trail, decentralized knowledge graph. We can cut this up in a decentralized and knowledge graph. When we're talking about decentralized protocols like blockchains, they're incredibly important because they are the trust networks. They bring the trust layer and they enable so much more. They enable things like decentralized identities. They enable things like tokenizations, NFTs, fungible, non-fungible tokens. There's so many things, tools, concepts that are developed, trialed in a very, very, very fast-paced fashion as well. But on their own, they have limited potential. Limited potential in terms of how can we apply them to the mainstream physical world. So here, the second part of knowledge graph becomes much more relevant, if you will, because the frictionless lies within that. Knowledge graphs is a technology that's very familiar within the Web 2. So you have Google, Facebook, Amazon, all of them utilizing knowledge graph to build proprietary value for their companies because it's a powerful thing for creating a linked data ecosystem from which you can gather value out of. It's great because it's highly structured. It gives you a great overview. It's really precise query. It's really fast. It's performant for things when you're talking about linked data concepts. And a lot of the things when we're talking about international trade, linked data. It's all about what went where, to whom, who was involved, what type of audit have been created, what type of certificates are involved, who has the ability or doesn't have the ability to perform something. It's all connected. The world's connected, the supply chains are connected, data is connected. We need to have a proper technology to address this connected world. And knowledge graphs gives us that ability. But Origin Trail creates a synergy between the blockchain and the knowledge graph technology in a decentralized knowledge graph. It's a public network, it's a permissionless network, so it has the integrity that is required. And it is a network that's hosted of over 2,000 nodes globally, again, permissionally entering the network. It allows for connectivity, it allows for interoperability, it allows for integrity. It allows different stakeholders to seamlessly connect to each other, to exchange data between each other, but have the data governance still in a way that they own that data. So they're not giving up everything just because they entered yet another system, or their data isn't getting appropriated by a large actor just because they want to optimize on how they're collaborating with their partners. And decentralized knowledge graph unlocks that possibility. Now, what we've been fortunate enough is to not only work on the implementation of the decentralized knowledge graph, which the first one was in 2018, and we've seen quite a few iterations since, becoming stronger, more features available, more things that you can do with it. We've also obviously been fortunate enough to be working with some great partners in implementing this decentralized infrastructure into a real life or physical world or tangible use cases within different domains. Starting off with a project that we'll be talking much more afterwards. Dan Pertelli is going to join us here live as well. He's the group director for innovation in British Standard Institution. And we actually met Dan over 2 years ago. 3 years ago, sorry, yeah, there we go. Time flies, especially in COVID times, say. So over 3 years ago, starting to look at how can we complement the vision or the mission that BSI has, and how can we help with the digital trust ambition that they've put forward. We've identified a lot of the different domains in which this can be created, and then we'll speak more to that. But I do want to mention the SCAN in particular use case, which is the Supplier Compliance Audit Network, which allows for competitors to collaborate utilizing decentralized technology to exchange audit report data on overseas factories when they're importing things into the United States. It's an incredible achievement to have this for SCAN organization to enable this type of co-opetition, collaboration between competitors, but also for Origin Trail technology to enable this type of precise data permissioning, because it's business sensitive data, data governance, who owns the data, as well as data integrity, because at the end of the day, you want to make sure that what has been accessed by, whatever you're accessing actually has the integrity that you are expecting from this type of data. Moving from the SCAN use case, there's implementations within the rail industry. We're fortunate to work again with Swiss Federal Railways on ensuring or raising the rail travel safety with the implementation there. There's very fun implementations, especially for me, because I'm a whiskey aficionado. So we're working with a startup whiskey distillery out of Ireland as well, trying to help them in their mission to have a transparency by design approach to building their brand and building their product, which is insane, because you can see how the shift is happening in understanding and approaching not only the, again, digital realm, but also physical, and how can we converge the two to make it even more impactful. Lastly, there's also things like pharmaceutical industry, which is greatly benefiting from the higher level of transparency that can be achieved there, especially when we're talking about things that end up in people's bodies and can really affect their health. What you really need there is the highest level of integrity of the data that you're looking at. So what we can see here, or what also, I'm not sure how I'm doing in time. I think I still have a few minutes, right? Yeah, we'll go on for a little bit more. What we're seeing as a common point across all these different use cases is really that the technology is fundamental. Blockchain is very, in a way, it's a very important technology, but it's still a fairly low level technology. And decentralized knowledge graph as a middleware is a low level technology as well. In a way, a blessing and a curse at the same time, because it might be a little wide, so difficult to comprehend sometimes, but at the same time, it's very, very powerful because you can deploy it to so many different domains, so many different industries. The ubiquity or the general applicability of the technology is only becoming stronger. And it's going to happen as it is happening with the different novel technologies. Things get more affordable, they get more effective in how they do and what they can deliver. And as we come to that point where it's no longer a question of whether, you know, this particular use case has enough margin to support this, is this particular use case far enough to be able to adopt something like the blockchain technology, we're going to come to a point where it's not going to be why trusted networks, it's going to be why not trusted networks, because it doesn't make sense to not use them anymore. And this is what we're working towards with Origin Trail. And where we really see the inflection points happening is where people are just people, organizations, individuals are going to be able to interact with these technologies seamlessly. It's going to be a frictionless engagement as much as we also want a frictionless international trade. Again, maybe to set the framework for our thought framework for the international trade, because I think it's talking to different stakeholder groups, you get a lot of different ideas about what that really encompasses. And I just want to maybe set a really a bit larger thinking around the international trade and the global supply chains. It's not just the logistics, it's not just the transportation. What we're talking about here is really looking at a wholesome process from end to end. So anything either from the primary production, also not kind of finishing at the retail, but going to or perceiving the consumers as a part of the supply chain and involving them in the whole process and allowing them to interact with this type of systems, because that's the only way the final inclusivity will be able to get to be achieved. All right, so I'll maybe do a final introduction of the two people that will be joining me on this, well, physical stage as well as digital stage today, and welcome them as well after to come on and start going through their introductory presentation as well. I think I've mentioned that we met Dan 3 years ago. I also met Ken, had the fortune to meet him in at an event in Scottsdale, which was organized by the British Standard Institution. And we've had a very interesting discussions there as well. And I'm excited to see as when the moment comes of moving from the initial discussions and then to fruition to really creating something that is already tangible and providing value today, but even more importantly, opening up so many more ideas, so many more opportunities to build on that foundational deployments in the future. It is a foundational technology. It is a thing of understanding and raising awareness around the importance of digital trust, importance of integrity. And once we have that, we have a lot of different directions we can go from, and we can have a lot of things that we can build on, of course, as the bottom line, to make things better as a whole, including making the international trade flow more seamlessly with what we're going to be talking about in a little while in more details as well. So without further ado, I'm gonna invite Dan to join me on stage and take it away with his presentation on BSI, on blockchain, on so many interesting things. And I'll try to keep some notes going, so we'll be talking about it afterwards as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Dan Pertel with the British Standards Institution. And it's nice to be here today. I appreciate the invite and an opportunity to come to present on what we're thinking is a very critical next step in terms of us bringing elements of digital trust into the global supply chain. I'll be joined by my partner, Ken McElroy from the Home Depot, who will follow me. And then I'll go over a use case immediately following that. So if we go to the first slide, please, or I got control myself, I assume. Yeah. So the British Standards Institution is a 120-year-old institution formed in the United Kingdom. We're one of the founders of the International Standards Organization. And each year we write 2,000 to 3,000 standards. We conduct about 270,000 audits in about 170 countries around the globe and provide about 70,000 consultancy days. And with that, what we're trying to do is obviously, everything from quality management to safety, to information security, business continuity, regulatory services across devices, anything that goes into your body, really providing trust around those systems, those processes, those solutions, those products that we use every day. And we're a Royal Charter company. And a Royal Charter company, 100% of the proceeds or the excess proceeds of the company are reinvested into the company, no distributed shareholders, for the betterment of mankind. So we invest on things like circular economy, again, information security, safety. And really our purpose is all about the betterment of mankind and what we can do to go ahead and further that. We're independent from outside influence, again, with no shareholders, no stockholders to actually kind of direct. So it's not about the profits, it's about the purpose. And the purpose is important. Really, it's inspiring trust for a more resilient world. So we build mechanisms of trust, and that's what we're focusing on from an innovation perspective. And they have several different themes to them, but it's around safety. We have a lot of focus globally around environmental health and safety. And what we're doing with that, with many of our thousands of clients, is really trying to ensure that those employees have a safe place to work. They're going home at night with their families, and we can ensure that through some of the safety services that we provide. Security is another key aspect of what we do. So what we're trying to work with from an information security, cybersecurity perspective, physical security, protecting supply chains, protecting data, protecting personal data, corporate data. And lastly, and something I want to talk a little bit about more, is sustainability. How can we bring trust to a very untrusted, ecosystem of sustainability, with greenwashing claims? So really what we're working on now and focusing on is how can we bring trust to verified claims around sustainability and put those instruments of trust, as we like to call them, in place. And so again, a very purpose-driven organization around safety, security, sustainability, and all of that with the wrapper of digital trust. So from an innovation focus area, we really have three things that we're trying to do in digitize assurance. So from an assurance perspective, this could be an ISO certification. It could be what we call a second party certification, such as social responsibility or supply chain security. But how do we advance really the digitization of the way audits are conducted today? They haven't really changed much if you look at it in the past 50 years. And COVID really provided us an opportunity to provide some radical disruption within that era. And it continues today to where we've delivered about 10,000 remote assurance days or audit days around 166 countries every month. And so we've digitized that. And really, I think what that's done is it's really fueled our appetite for innovation and allowed us to accelerate some of the other areas. Blockchain services is one of those. And this is where a partnership with Trace Labs Origin Trails is absolutely critical. Bumped into them by accident in the middle of China at a alternative food protein company. It was actually insect-based protein, which was an interesting aftertaste in your mouth. But this was a good accident and a good bump in. As we say, innovation is a contact sport, and this is where we bumped into, and I bumped into Branimir, and that was a good bump in. So our blockchain, we'll talk a lot about what we're doing there, but again, it's viewed as an instrument of trust and what we're trying to do to bring credibility, to bring trust to untrusted systems, and to be able to immutably provide verified claims in that respective area. Our augmented reality platform, this is what we're working on from a remote audit perspective, using 4 different immersive levels that really exploded with the pandemic. And we had the right solution at the right time. We started this back in 2018 and call it lucky, call it good, but we happened to trip on the right use case at the right time. And I think with the growing deficit of trust that we have, blockchain has enabled us and our clients for that matter, to go ahead and be able to tell that trust story because there are a lot of false claims. Predictive analytics is something else that we're very focused on. How do we take this data that we have access to now to try to provide insight in terms of where not risk are 3 months ago, but where risk may be 3 months from now, a year from now? What will those risks be? And the knowledge graph allows us to possibly do some of that, right? We can string this data together. We can go ahead and be able to tell that story and provide more value through the knowledge graph service. And then smart content. How do we digitize our content? How do we make that applicable to a company, not in call it a whole standard, but maybe a paragraph within a standard, and really tailor that specific message. So we came out with this last year, our innovation insight. So blockchain services, our partnership with Origin Trail, instruments of trust. You'll see Ken McElroy in the next presentation. Him being called out from a scan perspective with that. But what we're trying to do again is to provide trust to untrusted systems and go ahead and dispute false claims. And we talk a lot about that in this paper, and specifically 3 different use cases. I won't go over the first one. The Scan Trusted Factory program allowed us to do that. And I think you're going to be impressed when you hear the size of this organization, the member companies of this organization. It is the world's largest supply chain security association. And I won't steal Ken's thunder, but it's a very impressive use case that he'll drill down on in the next session. Personal training credentials. Each year we train about 230,000 students around the world. And with that, if somebody wanted to verify their credential, let's say it was a lead ISO 9000 quality management certification course, they would typically either show that certificate that we would physically provide to them, or we would actually get a phone call and actually have to verify that claim. With Origin Trail Trace Lab, we've actually digitized that to where they take the course, they get the credential, they can post the credential, And then equally go on the blockchain to make sure that's still a valid claim associated with it. Again, bringing trust to personal credentials, as well as the standards that we sell. We've got the capability of showing who the copyrighted version of that standard belongs to, because in many countries, you have to own that standard. You have to show that you're the copyrighted license holder of that standard. In blockchain technology, in the knowledge graph allows us to actually demonstrate that quite well. So again, bringing trust to all these different elements is purely what we're about. But with that, I want to get into the third use case. And so I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Ken McElroy, for that. Ken and I have been working together for a number of years. He's the vice chair of SCAN, again, the world's largest supply chain security audit association. And he's also the manager of global trade risk and export compliance for a huge US retailer, Home Depot. So hi, Ken, how's the East Coast?
It's very wet, Dan, but thank you for the kind introduction. Let me just say that it's been kind enough to partner with BSI and Origin Trail to really take a circumstance where competitors in the marketplace are able to utilize technology to provide value-added services to their individual organizations while maintaining the integrity of their own proprietary data. And it's really something that if you'd asked me 35 years ago as a young practitioner in supply chain that I would be at the time sharing manufacturing and supply chain details with Procter & Gamble working for Colgate-Palmolive, I would have laughed. We were, dead against each other with regard to the competitive landscape and would not have even dreamed of that. Fast forward to today, and here we have a workable business case where some of the largest manufacturing and retailing organizations in the world, particularly competing in the US market space, are doing exactly that. We can go to the next slide. So what's SCAN? SCAN started out a little over 7 years ago as a thought generated by a couple of progressive thinkers in supply chain security, specifically Dan, who just spoke, and David Blackerby from the Walmart organization. And they recruited several of the rest of us to sit and have a initial conversation about sharing data. Where that has grown is we are now in an organization that has 52 affiliated members that are sharing those informations. They're listed here on this slide. I won't drain the slide, but let's just suffice it to say it's $4 trillion in sales and growing every year. There's 22,000 factories in our repository. And our criteria is aligned directly with the U.S. Customs recently upgraded minimum security criteria that has been created in 2019 after initially being created in 2001 post the 9/11 attack on the United States. So we have 175,000 corrective actions identified in all the audits we've done, and those are followed up in our platform going forward. It's really been my pleasure to have driven or seen this organization grow from the infancy of 6 to the group it is today. And as you'll see as we go through the rest of this presentation, we have a large potential going forward to grow even further. Next slide, Dan. So our case study, where do we come to identifying that that blockchain and shared data had a large presentation or opportunity to drive security going forward. So on the left of this graph, you see the providers who are doing the actual on-site audits into our platform that's maintained in SCM, which is a proprietary tool of BSI's. Auditors conduct the audits, pass the data into the supply chain portal that SCAN manages. Those audits are then available to be reviewed by any of the members who are utilizing that particular location with regard to a unique identifying SCM generated unique identifier or a scan ID that also translates into a scannable barcode that allows verification going forward. Beyond that, we have the ability to review those results as individual members without knowing at all who else is utilizing that particular location. We know that the location is shared in the platform. We know that the location is shared by someone in the platform, but not specifically who that particular organization is. So that's where we are today. Where we are looking to take this and how we expect we can grow this platform is we can then add permissioned access to regulatory agencies, AEO organizations, other government agencies such as the US FDA, US Customs, and specifically give them the ability to see the results of these particular audits. Next slide, Dan. So here's a visual of what is the data points that are being shared in our platform. It's really the location of where the factory is, the particulars of that location, geographically where it's located, what the result of the audit showed, and you know the data of how the organization moves their materials forward from that location. Next slide, Dan. So here's a visual of what the results look like for that supply chain audit. It's really lined up with all the criteria with regard to what US CBP has put in their minimum security criteria. It provides a graphical presentation of what those results showed, and it also includes a country risk profile that BSI overlays on top of that presentation. Last slide, Dan. Okay, just let me say this before we move on. I think that the opportunity that we presented from a trusted trader perspective with regulatory agencies is a complete and total paradigm shift potentially in supply chain security. The ability to have regulatory agencies take data that is generated and gathered and marry it up with their own internal intelligence to do things like security targeting could effectively change supply chain security going forward and take us into the next several decades going forward. Thanks for your time, and I'll wait for our discussion.
I think we've all probably been on an airplane at one point or another when somebody comes on with a $3,000 Louis Vuitton roller bag, and you look at them and you say they really don't have the financial means probably to be traveling with that kind of luxury. And you know, while it's a trademark that you've reached some level of success, you know, I would describe that scans actually hit that. It's such a popular program now overseas that we have companies actually photoshopping reports and trying to convince, you know, some of the biggest retailers in the world, such as Ken's company, Home Depot, that they carry the credentials necessary for you to go ahead and to make a purchase order. And it took investigations for us actually to be able to prove whether or not somebody had the credentials, a factory had the credentials that they claim to have. We can instantly do that now with the SCAN blockchain solution powered by Origin Trail Trace Labs. And it's quickly becoming a best practice within our association, and a lot of fun doing it. And I'd also say, and maybe Ken can talk about this a little bit later, but I think what we have with the decentralized knowledge graph is the proper plumbing to open up to other ecosystems down the road. And it's going to be quite easy to do that. So the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Customs, and other associations we're currently in discussions with, to where we can provide those 10 blockchain components from a factory audit and share that openly to be a deeper trusted provider. So moving on to the next use case quickly that we'll go over is something called Trusted Bytes. This was a Origin Trail Trace Labs in BSI win from an Innovate UK solicitation that we had earlier in this year, and it's quite exciting. So what Ken went over with the SCAN Trusted Factory program came from a Homeland Security solicitation from their innovation group on preventing forgery and counterfeiting of certificates and licenses. And again, what we're about at BSI is bringing trust to untrusted systems. Hopefully you get that theme when I'm all done here today. But what we've been able to do with this is actually bring trust to these factory programs on very important matters of supply chain security, counterterrorism programs, post 9/11 programs that date back to 2001. And we were a finalist in this. We did not win it, but we felt it was such a good idea, we went ahead and built it anyway. And what it allows us to do is to neutrally, and in a GS1 format, go ahead and obviously demonstrate who in the supply chain is certified or not, providing that digital trust. And originally or initially, it's associated with the factory itself, but in the future, it could be associated to products, could be associated to transparency of goods in the supply chain. And I think that's absolutely where we're heading. So it avoids the human errors that we see quite commonly there. And really, I think what it did for SCAN is it demonstrated their ability to pioneer and to be visionary, and in a very untrusted world of supply chain and procurement. So we went forward with that. Ken and I actually presented this in Washington, D.C., along with Dave Blackerby, and we believe it is a very, very good use case. But Trusted Bytes was another opportunity that came from another government innovation solicitation, the Borders Custom Risk Management Program through Innovate UK. We are awarded this with a number of other agencies, to where an AEO is an authorized economic operator, somebody that has been certified to trade facilitation, financial integrity, and you can also extend that to security. So what this allows us to do is to demonstrate the credentials, again, via blockchain, but getting down to, I'd say, the next level, not just is a factory certified, but what is the factory putting into the supply chain, and what does that look like from a certification, from a transparency, and from a trust perspective. So we have the AEO client, which would be the different factories throughout the European Union or globally, and then our customs, Her Majesty's Revenue and Customs risk analysts that are working in this database to go ahead and understand what's in the supply chain and what it looks like. And again, we're using the decentralized knowledge graph to go ahead and take those different data silos to string those together to tell that story. So we do take AEO compliance data and we put that into the knowledge graph, and that is via a self-assessment. We've got documentation on corrective actions, and then the certificates or the credentials that actual factory or that supplier has been certified to. The geographical risk data that Ken talked about in the SCAN use case, we also use that here from an authorized economic operator program, and something that BSI is known for. It's the largest supply chain risk management and intelligence software in the globe. And so what we do is we take that certification and we look at the risk associated with compliance, and we overlay that with geographical risk threats and indicators that we track around the globe, including food safety scores, because primarily what this use case is about is food going from Southern Europe into the United Kingdom. And so we're using it to track a couple different things, including risk. Inspection data goes into the graph as well. So factory and warehouse audits, supplier audits, truck, trailer, container information. So we could provide that chain of custody and the traceability. And lastly, some of the shipment level data. All of this goes into a solution that Ken discussed, Supplier Compliance Manager, which has been rebranded to Connect Screen. This is a solution. It's the largest supply chain security and compliance software in the world. And with that, we're actually tracking different compliance indicators through there. So all of this goes in there. We crunch it into the knowledge graph. It's blockchained, and it's actually formatted. This is what some of the screenshots look like of that. But on a permission perspective, some of the customs agents would have access to this information, or the AEO client would probably have a broader level of access to it. And in the scan use case, we're sharing 10 data elements. In this use case, it's actually a bit more. So you can see there that you've got the AEO client overview and what they're sharing, the food retailer. And what we're doing is we're providing transparency of different critical elements that are used from a targeting perspective to determine which containers to inspect. Typically, customs, regardless of the country that you have, be it containerized goods, be it truck traffic, be it rail coming into the country, have resources to inspect typically less than 2% of those containers. So what you want is smart targeting associated with it. Where are my high-risk containers? Where's contraband likely to go in? Can I trust this container? And the approach that the UK as well as the US and several governments use is this force multiplier approach. So how can I have the trade community help us secure and provide transparency to what's coming into the supply chain, so therefore I don't have to inspect that container? And that's the whole benefit of having an AEO certification, having a CTPAT certification, is you will have reduced targeting, you will have reduced supply chain disruption, you'll have a faster throughput time associated with it. So what we're doing is we're providing different level information in terms of shipment status. And where the IoT devices come in is you can actually see real-time chain of custody. And with food shipments or fruit and vegetable, you have temperature control that you would like to know the integrity of that throughout the supply chain. With medical devices, with other types of, again, food products, if it falls below a temperature level and more importantly, probably goes up beyond a temperature control level, you would want to know that because you could have spoilage, you could have damage. So we're connecting real time to different IoT sensors to where we can show the integrity of that shipment throughout the supply chain. And not only can customs trust that, but the end consumer can trust it as well as the purchasing retailer. And again, what we do with the IoT devices, we actually show the chain of custody of this to where we can do this real time. We're connected to those different IoT devices. We can actually set an algorithm inside the shipment and inside the program itself, just to show what the level of risk is, again, from a geographical perspective, from a compliance perspective, and then from an IoT temperature perspective, or if we've had disruption or unauthorized stops in the supply chain that then would cause customs to want to actually inspect that. So again, all of this is actually entered into the blockchain to where you can actually validate that instantaneously to ensure that there's integrity to this shipment. And I think this is allowing for smarter targeting of the supply chain. And we've got other use cases where we're actually getting it down to a product level. It's quite exciting. Probably one of the most difficult things to do is track and trace and to have trust of a shipment, understand the provenance of a shipment. I believe this technology and this use case is actually allowing us to bring visibility, to bring transparency to this, and as a result, bring trust. So another quick use case that we're working on, in addition to a few of the others that we've had an opportunity to talk about today. So with that, that was my final slide. There's Ken and I's contact information. If you're curious about SCAN, go ahead and contact either of us. But at this point, I'll turn it back over to Thomas, and I think we're gonna have an opportunity for some open discussion. Thank you.
All right, Dan, that was, and Ken, of course, thank you very much for your introductory thoughts. That was a lot to chew through. I made some points that we can kind of drill down a little bit more, hopefully kind of looking at this overarching topic of the frictionless international trade and really what this type of technologies can do to address the challenges that you highlighted and also the solutions that you were speaking of, and maybe look at some of the components of that and how it really, how it works inside and out. But before we kind of drill down, Dan, I'll start with you. You have a career of 20 plus years. Well, it's not showing at all, but it's a formidable wealth of knowledge that you were able to attract throughout those years working in supply chains, especially the security element of it, in different companies. Intel, you had your own company that was dealing exactly with that, hold a patent on algorithm on assessing security risks in supply chains. Within BSI, obviously, a lot of the work that you do falls within this, being the father of the idea of SCAN. So just a lot of kind of work within this space. I'm more curious if you could speak to just throughout that journey, how did you see a development or movement of importance of data from throughout those 2 decades? Has it changed at all? Has it risen in importance? And just how to really, how much can accessibility to more data or more knowledge about certain things can enhance our security protocols around supply chains from your perspective?
Okay. Good question. And I know Ken shared how many years he's been in supply chain last night at a different event. So I'm right on your trail, my friend. So yeah, I've been doing it a while. I still got a few more good years, hopefully, in me. I'm having a lot of fun doing it. Yeah, but I think we're moving into an era, really I got started from a supply chain perspective, doing predictive modeling from a cargo theft perspective. Being able to demonstrate what loss rates were going to be for a high-tech product in Mexico versus Malaysia, and then breaking it actually down by different transportation modes and really, starting around that. In comes 9/11, and the supply chain security had a whole different meaning because the supply chain could be used to move something very dangerous into Western ideology countries. And so it opened up a whole nother avenue. And just recently I was volunteered, it was the 20th anniversary of 9/11. The program that Ken's obviously a big part of, CTPAT, is the Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism, a post 9/11 program and designed to prevent things from going into supply chain versus preventing things from, going missing. And I think we're moving from an era of, you probably recall this, Ken, but they used to say trust but verify, into an era where data now is allowing us to verify then trust. And so before we ever get into a contractual relationship with the client, we can actually look and we can see those credentials and instantly. And I think it's actually starting to manifest itself down more than just a company itself, but it's all the way to a company, a product. And really, I think the data is allowing us to really transfer, especially BSI too, I would say, from a B2B type of corporation, business to business, to B2B to C. So that end consumer, the consumer is now a vital part of that supply chain. And they want to know and be able to verify the claims associated with the company that's manufacturing, be it supply chain security, social responsibility, sustainability claims. And I think, again, the growing deficit of trust that we have is opening up an opportunity for us to provide new verified credentials and using data that we never previously thought possible. So it is moving very quickly, and it's exciting to see what new possibilities are out there.
I love that, verify and trust. That's it's a good turnaround and it makes a lot of sense. It also shows that when we are talking about the frictionless elements of the supply chain, we should never forget that even though we are aspiring for something seamless and frictionless, it does not mean that we are taking away from the requirements of the process. So things like security should always be upheld if we want to have this long-term successful, because otherwise it's just going to be more challenges than even before. So it is frictionless, but it also needs to take account of all the requirements of the supply chain reality. Great first thought. I'm gonna go with Ken now, if you don't mind. Ken, I'm have to double the number of Dan, almost, of the wealth of knowledge that you hold.
Oh, okay, knowledge, yes.
Yeah.
I hope I'm not the last to double.
I'm sorry. But it's next to the supply chain also. You've been working a lot in the compliance, obviously, space with Home Depot. And Scan as vice chair, obviously there. I mean, the work that you've achieved personally. When Dan was sharing about the Scan Association, it was really a first time that I've seen maybe so concretely a concept that we were before more theoretically introduced to as a co-petition, where you do have competitors working together to achieve a greater good. It was something that maybe we've heard of. They were explaining it in some, fringe cases, but then you have Scan, something that's so mainstream, something that's so, it's getting more and more adopted over year over year, and it's putting that in practice, right? So Ken, if you could speak from that experience of setting up Scan, of working with the Home Depot in the areas of logistics and compliance, where do you see these two fields heading in the future, and how does really these trust enhancing technologies what's the role of those technologies in this field? So I realize it's a little bit of a general question, but I'm giving you kind of a little bit of a more easy segue into the topic, and then we'll drill down into more stuff.
Well, thank you, Thomas. I think the easiest way to answer your question is to turn it around into a real life scenario that anybody who resides anywhere in the globe or resided anywhere in the globe during 2021 experienced a slowdown in their demand chain that was created by a slowdown in the supply chain. So what I'm referring to is the blockage of the Suez Canal earlier this year, where a evergreen container ship turned sideways and basically slowed down the flow of commerce around the globe that we are still today, many months later, recovering from. So the concepts of shared data, of frictionless supply chain, really say a lot about how we can take technology and allow things like Dan was talking about in the last portion of his presentation, of taking data flow, taking information, and combining that information to allow for forward-looking, speedy release of goods through the enableization of the blockchain and data elements that the regulatory agencies are obligated to take into consideration. But if we're able to maintain and demonstrate those kind of touch point connections, that can take what would have been a container of fruits and vegetables, as Dan referred to them, coming through the Suez Canal, sitting in place for many days or longer, but allowing the data points to say, okay, that container was never outside its temperature realms. We have the touch points for where it was loaded and where it's going to. We can, with relative integrity, verify that those realities took place, and then release that container to the consumer or to the consumer chain without any further delay. So that's just a simple example, I think, of where this reality has a profound practical delivery purpose, and where I think we're going to go in the future as we expand these footprints into other regulatory agencies and other ecosystems, as Dan described.
That was a very good example, and that, to your point, I think the Suez Canal incident kind of shows two things: to the testament as to the technology, in sense of how much really control it was still able to exert over the products that were on board, and at the same time a pitfall in sense that we've had all the available technology. It wasn't lack of technology; it was lack of orchestration of the technology that really. Just to give the author also a shout out, that was John Skeo's comment on the blockage in the Suez Canal is really all the technology was there. It was just the orchestration or the connections between the systems weren't enabled for it to for that to be prevented, and it shows how many really data collection. In a lot of sense, it's no longer a problem, right? We have this data collection happening already. It's just that the connections between those different data silos really isn't happening. And that's why in a lot of ways, we are still struggling with things that might at the first look not seem as complex, but as you deep dive into it, it show their true complexness. So the next question I have goes a little bit more into the topic that you both mentioned in your discussion. So I don't know who's going to take that one. I'll let you decide or fight over it. And it really is around AEO, right? So it's a very interesting concept that's very prevalent across the globe in international trade and global supply chains. But if one of you could speak more to just the difference between having that program and not having that program as an importer, what the difference really is, so that kind of just to highlight the importance of programs like that, and of course, what type of data or what are we searching for to kind of allow for safe passage of safe products.
I think Ken's got to take that. He's representing
AEO master.
And he's representing an importer, so I'll let him take first crack at that one, Ken.
Okay, Dan, thank you. I would say it's profoundly critical that you have the opportunity to review or standardize what organizations are monitoring their supply chains to do. AEO and to a connectivity perspective, U.S. Customs have actually done that. They've created a ability to recognize each other's uniqueness and similarities, and utilize those things to say, okay, we have a collaboration, we have a need to collaborate, we have the ability to verify what's going on in a country's operation, and then because we understand that they have those controls in place, we can trust that we can do frictionless business, or as the least amount of friction in translating those transactions. So from a U.S. perspective, I believe there's 18 now AEO organizations around the globe that the U.S. recognizes as equivalents to the U.S. Customs platform. So that's an opportunity for us to say, we don't have to worry about the idiosyncrasies of those particular supply chain challenges in those locations, because they're measuring exactly the same way that we would be measuring. And I would say that that allows me to, when I'm asked from a merchant at the Home Depot, to say, okay, do I source from here or do I source from here? And the first thing I do is I go back and say, okay, what are the circumstances surrounding that geographic location? And this one has the least amount of risk, because it has the ability to quantify what the supply chain puts and takes are from a security perspective, as well as then overlaying the risk generated in a supply chain based on the data that is collected by BSI and SCAN, and say, okay, here's the better choice, here's the least risky choice, and let's go forward there.
Let me pick up on that too. I think, back then I was with Intel Corporation. I think we were company number 3 certified to CTPAT. And CTPAT is obviously mutually recognized with AEO in the 18 countries that Ken's talking about, including the entire EU. So I think if you're a factory, if you're actually selling to an AEO or a CTPAT certified company, if you're able to get an AEO certification, you absolutely have to do that. And I think it's a huge competitive advantage from a transportation and logistics perspective, because it extends to other supply chain partners beyond an importer or a retailer, such as the Home Depot. But without those credentials, you're not likely getting contracts from major corporations that are looking at the transportation and logistics of international trade. So it's absolutely key that you get and you maintain that certification. What I think's neat about SCAN, just going back there quickly, is if you look at those logos on that slide that Ken covered, these are staunch competitors. They compete with each other, but they've set aside those competitive differences to share certain data elements through the knowledge graph, because they don't compete on trade security. They don't compete on a supply chain security counterterrorism program. They don't compete on social labor, child labor. I mean, they have a uniform purpose to actually drive that out. The technology allows us to do that. And I think it's really cool to see these competitors working together from a force multiplier perspective. And what it does is it eliminates just a lot of overwork, because 1 week it could have been Home Depot in there, the next week it could have been Walmart, next week it could have been Target, who knows. But it allows us to really bring a lot of efficiencies to different corporations, and then mutually recognize that amongst the association. And I would say, if there's one area where private sector is ahead of government, and where government could use a knowledge graph, it's just sharing the information between the mutually recognized entities in terms of who's certified with those mutually recognized programs. So CTPAT recognizes, call it UK HMRC's AEO, but the systems don't talk. And as a result of that, you still have areas for opportunity and efficiency within the supply chain to go ahead and be able to cross-reference it. So in that regard, I think SCAN's ahead of the curve there. I think government and regulators could follow suit in terms of how to actually reduce some of those inefficiencies and the inability to mutually recognize within, call it, the global supply chain.
Yeah, so if I got that one correctly, AEO already made such a big leap in terms of ensuring that what is being imported into a country adheres to a certain standard, that Home Depot is likely not going to purchase from you if you don't do that, because the difference in time to import something into the US might be so great that it doesn't pay off, as well as the risks associated with it are so great it doesn't pay off. Am I doing that? Is
that's exactly right, Thomas. It's a question of speed to market, and is where the money is made. But again, overlaying on top of that, the trusting factor is getting something to the marketplace only to have it be substandard or God forbid, containing something that is poisonous or otherwise, would be the death knell of our business. So again, it's really an opportunity for us to take those requirements and put them in front of the decision tree as opposed to down its decision tree.
Yeah, I think and just looking at that potential that is unlocked by that synchronization of how to say it, processes between different countries. To Dan's point, just to imagine how much more value could we unlock if we would be able to synchronize systems as well, where we would have the government systems be able to communicate with each other or allow easier data sharing between each other. It opens up a whole nother spectrum of how much more secure, safe the global supply chains could become. And kind of following the example of SCAN, where we have competitors collaborating together, do you see that governments could be making that next step of collaborating in that way?
Yeah, I'll take that one, and then Ken. Yeah, I think so. I mean, you've got mutually recognized programs. They go through that the minimum security criteria is equally aligned. And so we recognize those, yet there is no, call it, verifiable system of trust for the participants of those programs to be mutually recognized across all of those respective AEOs or different programs. And so I think there is an opportunity there to get systems to talk, I think, which saves time on everybody's side. And I know that's not easily done. It needs to be in place. I know they're working on that, and I think there was some efforts, Ken, between Canada and the U.S. at one point, but that's just two countries of several that are mutually recognized. So getting in that system of trust to the participants, the certified members to that program, I see that as a real value, not just for the governments, but for the companies that are actually certified to them.
Yeah, Ken, maybe I can jump in just with an extension of the question that Dan just tackled. Do you see SCAN 5-10 years along the line being able to be a international organization, just expanding from the current US focus across multiple AEO countries ambition? Sorry if that's a little bit off script. Feel free to just bounce it back of me.
No, Thomas. That's an actual visionary kind of point of view. I would say, if SCAN, which I can say has become as much of a passion of mine as anything else. If SCAN can take its footprint and expand it into an international organization that has its data integrity, its data sharing capabilities to the AEO organizations around the world, and be able to say, okay, we have a multinational, multi-continent supply chain shared data platform, and the connectivity that it could include with, okay, here's the different nodes where a good travels from origin to destination, and do that from an international perspective. That would be the ultimate. There's really no reason to say that we can't do that. We just need to take that reality or our platform and sell it to the fact that it would benefit every organization, every manufacturing organization, every supply chain security organization around the globe. So if I could fast forward 5 years as I get closer to my retirement point and say that we've accomplished that, I would be thrilled.
To that point, I mean, with the points that Ken made, it's not even perhaps a requirement of SCAN to grow into an international organization as much as it is to inspire other scans to pop up in different countries, and then be able to work with SCAN on kind of synchronizing and exchanging data that can make the entire kind of platform more engaging and have better data access, kind of availability, discoverability, verifiability, and at the end value as well, right? So we are kind of tiptoeing around the data economy topic here, and how really this how to put value on it. And the reason why really SCAN use case is so exciting is because of the fact that yeah, like you have competitors recognizing the value of data without even needing to append the monetary value of it, just because, like Dan rightfully said, it's security is a shared value of all those companies that are involved in it and have a kind of a base motivation to go into it. Dan, I know that kind of SCAN is definitely a topic near and dear to your heart, but BSI has released a white paper on instrument of trust. You guys see the wider picture in terms of how decentralized technologies could impact the future of how we perceive trust. So wanted to just give you maybe just a chance to speak on the digital trust topic and what it means for BSI, what it means to this certain processes that, or products, or even industry initiatives that you guys are leading and working in. How do you see it impacting really the future? What does digital trust mean for BSI's offering in the next years?
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we've been talking about a lot. I mean, we're right now in the middle of our, call it 5-year strat sessions, and having a lot of discussions. And digital trust is center to most conversations that we're having. You know, and a lot of companies, I think, would refer to us as an audit company or a certification body. But, you know, if you really, you know, use the first principle approach and you boil it down to the basic truth of what we're providing, I really believe it's all around trust. How do I trust this company? Through the credentialing that we're providing, through the certification that we're providing. How do I trust this product? Through the product certifications that we're providing, through the testing, through the kite mark, which is a mark of trust associated with the product. How do I trust a person? You know, and again, the credentials that we're providing. So again, if you boil it down to its most basic element, I think what we provide is trust. And yes, we're still going to audit. Yes, we're going to still consult. We're still going to train people. But how do we digitize that? How do we get trust in a digital element? And I think this is where really blockchain technology really comes full on into what we're talking about. And again, I think it's really key that when we're thinking trust into a supply chain, you really gotta take that end consumer, the client, into consideration. Who's buying that product at the end? And I'm having discussions right now with a very large footwear company, and you know, they would like a consumer to be able to go to their product, to scan something, and from that perspective, be able to tell the story of that product, be able to tell the story in terms of the fact that they're socially responsible, there's no child labor in that factory, that they're certified to these different programs, that the factory uses these renewable energy, you know, whatever percentage it may be, or recyclable materials in there. The consumer's getting more and more finicky. In the age of social media, you can really have a negative event that will cause massive disruption in your supply chain, or your buyers to really walk away with that. So there needs to be those digital trust components, and that's purely what we're focused on. I think from a SCAN perspective, you know, we've provided a digital trust layer over factories. I think there's other layers, and you know, we've got the plumbing in place right now to go ahead and to get to some of these roadmap items that right now are just kind of, you know, dreams that we're thinking about, but it's absolutely critical. Digital trust is, again, central to everything, and we're going to be focusing purely on that. It's just part of our entire business right now.
Yeah, I just love how wholesomely, holistically, exhaustive in a way you guys are approaching the trust subject, and kind of different approaches taking to ensuring that this is present in so many ways that are touching our lives, and actually putting, you know, your mission towards driving mankind towards a better future to action day in and day out, including obviously being such an important actor in the global trade. I'm going to ask you both for some closing thoughts here. I know that I'm hugely happy to have a chance to be able to speak with you here today. And again, thanks also to the organizers for inviting us and giving us a chance to share this panel with you all. Of course, Dan, Ken, thank you for your time. And I'd really appreciate your thoughts on just what does frictionless international trade, what are the main tools and drivers you see it based on the discussion we just had today? So I don't know who's going first. Ken, then.
Is it age before beauty, or how are we doing this, Ken?
Well, why don't I go first and let you finish up in person there, Dan? I would say the experience of the last 18 months with the global pandemic and the pressures that the global pandemic has put on supply chain and execution and the pharmaceutical industry to take a platform that had been 20 years in creation and deliver in a matter of months a vaccination for a virus. The frictionless supply chain needs no more better case to show than that. We had competitors in the pharmaceutical industry sharing operational facilities. We had them sharing scientific and what would normally be called proprietary information. So if we learned nothing at all from that, frictionless supply chain is where we're going to go as a world, as a humanistic collaboration, and it's really what's going to allow us to become more united going forward.
Well put, Ken. Yeah. So I think it is just some closing remarks. You know, as I think I said earlier, trust is transparency, and transparency is trust. And you know, I think if you would ask, when I took my role in 2018 at BSI as leading innovation, if you would have asked 10 years ago if I'd have been doing this, I would have probably never in your wildest dream would I be in this position. But I tell you what, it's a lot of fun. And, you know, in understanding blockchain technology, knowledge graphs, decentralized knowledge graphs, you know, it can be a bit complex. And I think what I'm excited about is just how companies like the Home Depot, like the SCAN Association itself, are willing to go ahead there, experiment, and do it. I think, you know, I think what we've demonstrated very clearly is practical applications to blockchain technology, to a decentralized knowledge graph. I mean, this is real world stuff. I think that we're talking about here. Digital trust is real world. These are solving, you know, modern day problems. It's not hype. It's actually bringing a lot of trust in. And when we have discussions, you know, I have something that we call an innovation date with some of our key accounts, and I get to meet with many big companies, have a lot of fun doing it. And I know this technology resonates. There does just seem to be a little bit of a resurgence of blockchain technology. I think it's helping us tell the trust story. And we're building these different ecosystems that are only going to get stronger when we connect them with other ecosystems. So, you know, I'd just like to thank Ken for being a wonderful partner in this, and really a big supporter and a visionary with that. But I'd also like to thank my friends from Origin Trail Trace Labs for really making it easy. I mean, hopefully we showed you some blockchain technology and the illustration of it that you wouldn't think is actually associated with it. So I think you've made a beautiful product for us. It's working, and I only look forward to future use cases. So thank you, Thomas. I appreciate it.
I appreciate the kind words, Dan, and Ken as well. I'd like to start off by thanking you all again for taking the time, and as we have, we can share the sentiment entirely. We really enjoy working on this, and we enjoy the concrete impact of the technology and the relationship that this brings to the world. And I think we managed to bring out some very good lessons for the wider topic of the international trade as well. It's definitely seems to be more connections, more accessibility, having things to be governed in terms of data or any other things in a way that it's the businesses feel comfortable doing it, and it needs to have a lot of trust and transparency. At Origin Trail, we're excited to be working with you both on this in the future as well. And I have to say, I feel smarter every time I speak to you. I learn so much, so I look forward to having many more of those in the future. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and till the next time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Thank you, Tomáš Levák from Origin Trail, to be a moderator of this panel. This will conclude today's session, and tomorrow is another day for Blockchain Week. And thank you all for attending, for being here online or here live.